Welcome everybody to lesson 11 of our Python developer course. We are going to explore functions in Python. We have studied functions before, but this time we are going to look at it in another way. We are going to recap on some important aspects of functions, and we are going to do a lot of hands-on exercises in this particular lesson. The goal is to help you build a practical understanding of functions because we have realized that functions are part of almost every Python program. There is no single Python program, especially enterprise level Python program, that doesn't have functions. You will need functions for everything you do in Python. You will need functions for data analysis. You need functions for anything you do in the cloud, anything you do in cybersecurity. You need functions for any application you develop. So it is very, very important that we revisit it. If you are new to functions, pay close attention to everything we'll be learning and make sure you understand it. I believe with this lesson alone, you should understand. It will be best to watch the previous lesson on functions, which is already in your root phase, lesson 11. And this is going to be a part 2, just to explore certain areas that we couldn't really touch on to make it easier for you to understand and to get a more practical feel of it. And our goal is to ensure that every one of you become very, very confident in Python and actually master Python. We want every RITA member or learner to be a Python developer who is really qualified to use Python in the industry and in the real world. So we want to take a look at Python very, very well. And I want to encourage you that never settle for anything less than your best. Never settle for anything less than your best. This is an attitude you need to have. This is a mindset you need to have. This is how you should be thinking. I have met a lot of successful people, a lot of extraordinary people, and I have seen one thing that is common about them. They all strive for excellence. They all have an inward desire to be the best. They have a desire to be the best. And so everything they do it so well. Everything they do. And it has become so much part of them that that is actually the secret to their shining. All right. That is a secret to their shining. And if you want to be successful, if you want to stand out in your work, to let your work speak for you, to be invited to places, not just force yourself to places, let your work speak for you. All the great people you know, this is their secret motivation. Have the attitude of excellence, the attitude to be good. Yes, to be good. And if that is your mindset, everything you do will be so good. Everything you do will be so good. Yes, I know one, I know a lot of people. It's like I've seen this. So even if there is a work that is so simple, they don't treat it anyhow. They don't do shoddy jobs. Everything they do is top quality because it is part of them. Excellence is part of them. So let us have this mindset. Let us have this mindset. Everything we do, especially when we are working for clients, when we are working on projects, let's make sure that it is the best. Don't worry about the time it is taking you or what you are going through. Don't rush the job when you are not done. Don't say I'm done when you are not done. Don't spend 5 minutes and say I'm done. I've seen that these people they actually spend more time perfecting the work. All right. And I know people who are not successful. They just do 1, 2, and they say I'm done. Yes. So let's settle for the best and alone. And Never settle for anything that is less than our best. This is something that if you understand it and it becomes part of you, nothing will stop your success. Nothing will stop your success. And your work will open doors for you. Your work will speak for you and you'll go places. All right. So this is me. And I'm so happy to be your instructor in this lesson. Today's lesson is titled Mastering Functions in Python. To define, to call, and use functions effectively. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to confidently define a function. So our goal is for you to be able to sit down tonight, this evening, and define a function by yourself. No GPT help, no AI help. Just sit down and define a function. Can you define a function by yourself? That is what we are here to achieve. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define a function by yourself. We'll start with simple functions, and you will be familiar with how we define functions. And then gradually, we will work on more complex functions. And after the lesson, we'll have a homework that will allow us to think some more and create more complex functions. Understanding how to define functions is so important. It is at the core of knowing and using Python. We will also learn that functions, once they are defined, they are not executed by Python until they are called. And so we will learn how to call functions as well. So we define, we call, and also to use functions. And you have to understand that there are a lot of functions that are already existing in modules and packages and libraries and in Python itself. And so there are a lot of functions that you are not the one going to define them. What you will be doing is to just use them. For example, the print function. Every Python developer uses a print function right from day one. You didn't create a print function. You didn't create an input function. There are a lot of functions that you didn't create, but you can never be a Python developer if you cannot create your own function. So that is what we are here to achieve. And to start with, we are going to talk about understanding what functions are. If you can hear me, please type functions in the chat for me. Just type functions in the chat for me. Let me know you are here. Let me know you can hear me. I'm audible and visible, and you are ready for the lesson. Thank you all. All right, so in Python, a function is a reusable block of code designed to perform a specific task. If you have created a function before, this is what a function is and what a function does. First of all, a function is a block of code, what we call code blocks. I'm sure developers have used code blocks or have heard of code blocks or blocks of code. When we say a block of code, we are talking about a set of instructions that is supposed to do something. All right, so it's a block of code that has been written to work collectively to achieve something, to perform a specific task. All right, so you can write your code there. For example, if you create an if statement, you state your condition and then the code block, right? So that block of code is the payload waiting to happen if the condition is met. If the condition is not met, that payload will not be executed. Think of the payload as a bomb. If the condition is met, it will explode or detonate. If the condition is not met, it will not do anything. All right? And so there are a set of instructions that we have written. That is what we call the block of code. So what is a function? A function is a block of code that you write down. We are going to understand that when you write that block of code, Python will not do anything about it until somebody calls that block or someone calls that function. And when you call that function anywhere in your code, the function will be executed. And this is so powerful because as you advance in Python, this is going to be the style of writing code. This is how senior Python developers write code. You know why? Because that block of code becomes something that is reusable. When we say it is reusable, it means that the code has been written once somewhere and given a name and defined under a function, and it can be called as many times as a developer wishes. So what a junior developer will do is to write code for everything. A senior developer will not do that. A senior developer will create a function that does the work or that does the thing and call it when he needs it. And a senior developer is used to writing code that way so that it can be called or reused anytime. This is what motivated or inspired the creation of modules, packages, and libraries. You see, all the libraries you use today, they were once somebody's code that was used to achieve one thing. And the person went like, this code can be reused. Why don't I package it? You see, so you can package a code block into a function. You can create multiple functions in a Python file and save it and call it a module. Well, as you save it, it is a module. But then not just a module that is part of a program, but intentionally created to function as a module. And that module has several functions. So when you import that module into another Python program, what you can do is to call the individual functions one by one and use them. You can create more modules in different files, put them together and make it a package. And you can also create a library. Everything starts with understanding functions in Python. When a function is defined, Python stores the instructions but does not execute it right away. So this is exactly what I said. Once you define it, your job is to define it. Python doesn't do anything with it. The function remains inactive until you explicitly, or any developer explicitly calls it somewhere in the code. When the function is called, then the function will now execute. And so what we are going to do is to look at how functions look like and start learning how to define our own functions. So what we are looking at over here, it is called a function. Let me share my screen well. Let me share my screen properly so that we can see this really well. And so what I'm here to tell you now is that this is an example of a function. So as you progress or advance in learning Python, you need to start recognizing functions and start calling functions and start using functions. All right. So this particular function, who can tell me where the definition of the function begins and ends? Where does the definition begins here with what we are looking at? Where does the function definition begins? Who can tell me? Just look at this function. Okay, so Robly says at def. Thank you very much. Thank you. Timothy says def and ends with return. Thank you. Thank you. That is it. Thank you, Esimami. Great to see you, Esimami. I'm so happy. All right. So Francis says def. All right. And where does it end? Where does it end? Where does it end? All right. So it ends at return. Thank you. Now, this is how a function looks like. This is a very simple function. And your job is to recognize functions and start getting used to it. All right. If you really want to grow in Python, and Python is like a big barrier in your journey, or let me not call it a barrier. It is a big task in your journey. All right. You need to master Python. All right. So what we have to do now is to start getting used to functions. You know, some beginner Python developers, they like if statements a lot. Everything they want to use if, everything if and elif and else. That's what they are used to. And when they see functions and classes, they start pulling away. No. Where we have gotten to now, this is a time to absorb this. This is a time to look at this really well and now accept it that this is my level now. And now I am a function, the creator, and I'm used to functions and I work with functions. So over here, you can see that this code here is not calling a pre-existing function, but it is defining, creating its own function for the program. And this function is actually converting temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit. And so very soon we will see how we define functions, and you can see how the person defined the function and the name the person gave to the function. We will start looking at what the parentheses here, what it does, what it is, why we need it, how we can create ours, and what this def is here for. And most importantly, we'll be talking about this return statement over here. Because when it comes to functions, we have to understand that when you are done writing your function, you either return a value or you print a statement. So if you look at functions very well, you realize that the function will end either with a return or with a print. And we are going to understand why, because if you use a return, what it means is that after the block of code works, its results should be sent back to the function, okay, or to the caller, whoever called the function. The result should be returned. We'll be learning what this return means. What do you mean by return the value or the result? Okay. What does it mean to return it? And what does it mean to print it? And when do you return? When do you print? So we'll look at that. Now watch this. Over here, we are seeing that this function here, I really like this example because this function here, we can see that it has a comment. This means that it is possible to comment in functions and see how the commenting is done. It is done with triple double quotes or triple single quotes, and it ends with triple double quote or triple single quote. We'll look at the name of this. It has a name. We'll look at it. So if you put comment in a function, telling us what a function does, it has a name. So we will learn, we'll discover what the name of that is. Now, this is a simple function, and you realize that the block of code is just this line. The block of code is just this line. Okay, so what is happening here is that there is a calculation here. Celsius times 9/5 into brackets plus 32. Then store the result in what is called Fahrenheit. Then return the result, which is a Fahrenheit. Return it. All right. So the function is just a box that holds an instruction or a calculation or a block of code to perform an operation. When that operation is done, we either return the results or we either print something that we are done. But the function stays dormant until somebody calls it. I am sure you started learning about functions in primary schools. I don't know if you remember, but if in primary school, there was something called functions. I don't know if anybody can go back to primary school and remember those things called functions. And these functions, it's like anytime you put something in them, a number or something in them, then it will output, the result will be something. I don't know if anybody remembers functions, but you started learning functions way back in primary school. All right. So the idea about functions is that you create an operator or an operation that can take in a value. The value here is a parameter over here. So over here, this thing here called Celsius, that is the value the function is waiting for. You see, that is the value the function is waiting for. And so anytime you call it and you give it that value, then you will see that the function will operate on it. I don't know whether it was called operators or functions in primary school, something like that, but think about it. Now, this particular function, yes, this particular function, this is a name, it's called Celsius Celsius to Fahrenheit. So you can see how it was called over here. And when it was called, you can see that a value was put in it. What value do you see in this function? Who can tell me what value you see here? What value do you see? 25. Thank you, Prosper. So watch this. You can see that the function is waiting to perform an operation on any Celsius value that will be given. Thank you very much. So you can see that when the function was called, it was given 25. And we all know that because of the 25, the output will be different from when we give it 30. So why did we get different values? When we provided 25, we got a different output. If we provide 30, we are going to get a different output. Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Who can tell me the answer? Why? Okay, because that is what is going to happen. When you call the function and you give it 25, the output will be different. And you also give it 30, the output will be different. Any number you provide as the argument, the output is going to be different. I need just one person to tell me why. Why? All right, it is not constant, yeah, but why? Why does it really give you a different value? Why does it give you a different value when you input 25 and when you input 30 or a different number, you get a different output? All right, so someone said the argument is getting converted by the function. Okay, thank you, Hilary. Robly says because the function will recalculate the value. Okay, good. You see, so the function is like a machine waiting for you to give an input. It will perform its operation based on the input you provided. Okay, so it is a machine that already exists. There was something about it in mathematics in primary school. I'm just not remembering it right, but there was something about functions. So you can see here that the Celsius we have here is what the function is waiting for. So the person provided 25. And so because 25 was provided here, this Celsius, which is a variable, will become 25. So if you put 25 here, the calculation is definitely going to be different. If you put 25 here, this is going to be a different calculation. It's going to be 25 times 9 over 25 plus 32. If you don't put 25 and you put 30, the calculation is going to be different as well. And so the function will operate on the input you provide. The reason why I showed you this is for you to see a real world function. This function is a real function that is converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, converting temperature. So this is a function that can be put in a real program. And you can see that the output here, you can see that we use a print function to print it, okay? And the reason why this code will work is because as the result is returned to the function, this print function here will operate on it here and print it. So if you run this code, you are going to see the output. All right. So right now, let's talk about how we will define our own functions. Now, before we define our functions, we need to understand that using functions promotes code reusability. I've already mentioned that to you. Promotes code reusability. Please type code reusability in the chat for me. Code reusability. Please put that in the chat for me. Yes. And this is something that we promote in Python as we are shaping Python learners to be good and to become seniors. Because seniors write code this way. Seniors think in terms of reusability. Okay? Think about it. Just think about it. This function that converts Celsius to Fahrenheit. You see now it has become a program already that anybody in the world can use. And the person doesn't even have to understand how the result was created. You see, it has been created in a way that anybody can use it. So this code we just looked at can become a module that is down. And anyone who ever wants to convert to Celsius to Fahrenheit, you don't have to write the code again. Someone has done it. So all you have to do is to call it and provide your Celsius value, and you get the answer. You see, so it can even become an app that non-tech people can use. So anytime you pick a calculator or a computer program and you are doing something with it, you know that this program can convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit. You didn't know how it was created, but when you put your Celsius in, you get your Fahrenheit. You see, it is a function that is running that operation. The developer did the calculation and made it reusable. Anybody can use it. There is something else called modularity. Please have modularity in the chat for me. Modularity. Please put that in the chat for me. Modularity. Please put that in the chat. Thank you, Ato. Yes. So using functions promote code reusability, promote modularity. Modularity refers to the concepts of creating modules or breaking programs into smaller parts. You see, what I'm trying to tell you is that this is how senior Python developers write code. As you get yourself prepared to grow in Python and to enter into the industry, you are supposed to learn the best practices of writing Python code so that you can work in a real enterprise level team. Because we write code in a way that we can reuse it. We write code in a way that we can even finish writing the code and make it a module. You see, so senior developers, they think in terms of modules. So this code that has been created right now, it can be saved as a module. And if it is a module, it can be imported anytime. So this is what we call modularity. And then we also have simplicity. You can see how simple the code is. So every Python developer grows into maturity by writing simple code, clean code, reusable code, and modular code. Let us do our first demonstration here. I'm going to open to PyCharm. And after this demonstration, we are going to talk about how we define functions. And I'm going to be giving you simple exercises to code along as we study functions, because the goal of this lesson is to get you used to functions, get you at that level if you are not there already, get you to understand functions, and get you to start writing and defining your own functions. All right, so let me call this module. I'm going to create a module. A module is just a Python file. So I'm going to call this, let's say, Celsius to F converter, okay, .py. Don't forget the .py. Celsius to F converter. All right, so I've created this file. Then what I will do is to write this code in. Okay, so let me put a comment here and say that this function converts temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit. All right. All right. It's good to write comments. You see, this is all part of best practices. You know how to write comments, you know how to write simple and clean code, you know how to write reusable code. So we say def, and then we call this Celsius to Fahrenheit, and we will notice that the name Celsius to Fahrenheit is the name the person chose. It has nothing to do with any Python standard. It's a name the developer chose. All right. So you will also understand that somebody created a print function. And when the person created the print function, it became a reusable function that everyone can use. And so everyone can call the print function, but the print function was created. You see, we don't remember how the print function was created, but sorry, we don't know exactly how it was created or what code was written to show something on the screen, but we are able to use it. Okay. All right. So what I'm writing here is just a comment. It has nothing to do with the block of code. This is just a comment. All right. And when we are done and we look at how functions are defined, we will look at some of the things I'm doing here, and we will look at the features of the function. So the only real code is this: Fahrenheit is equal to, into bracket, the Celsius, which was put here as a parameter or a variable. This is a variable. This means that whenever you call this function, you have to provide this value, okay? Provide this value. And as you provide that value, the function will work on that particular value. All right. So this is a calculation for Celsius to Fahrenheit, and we are done. So we just return the output was stored here in this variable. So I'll just return the Fahrenheit. That's all. Anytime you say return, what you are doing is that you are telling your function that whenever you are called, don't print. See, some functions we print their output. So after calling them, the function will output something. There are some functions, they don't print anything. They just do something. After they do it, they return the results. This means that if you want to use it, you will decide what to do with the result. If you want to use a result for another calculation, then you'll be able to do it. If the results have been printed, then you couldn't have used it for another calculation. So it is very important to return, and sometimes very important to print. So right now, I want you to keep this name in mind. Now, what I've created is a module. Okay, keep it in mind because I'm going to ask you, because I'm going to close this and I'll ask you to provide this for me, this name. And if you're able to provide it, then what we are doing will work. So we are trying to demonstrate this particular function as a module. Let's close it and let's create a new file for a new project. So let's say this is a temp project, temperature project.py. And this temperature project.py, we need a lot of modules to work with. And we just remember that there's a module called Celsius what was the name? Who can put the name in the chat for me? The module we just created. Okay. What is the name? All right. Celsius F converter. So watch this. So we'll just say import Celsius F converter. That's all. Wait a minute. So we are not going to write any code. The only thing we know is that inside the Celsius F converter, we have a function called Celsius F converter dot Celsius to Fahrenheit, and it accepts, look at what it's asking for. It accepts something called Celsius. Okay, so let's provide 25 to Celsius. Good. When you run this code, nothing will happen because the function was not given any instruction to print anything, so there's nothing. So if you want to print it, you will now go ahead and say print the output. Now when I print it, I'm going to see 77. Someone can say, okay, I don't want to print, but I want to store it as the C value. Let me just call it C value or Celsius value. Let's create descriptive variable. Okay, so Celsius value. This is a variable I created. So what will be stored in this variable? What will be stored in this variable is the calculation that was done here out of this particular function called Celsius to Fahrenheit and the input we provided. Let's call this Celsius value 1 and come here and say Celsius value 2. Okay, so we'll say Celsius to Fahrenheit converter the Celsius to Fahrenheit. Now let's provide 30. You see, because we didn't print and we returned, it means that the output or the result can be used for something else. So right now I can say print f strings. The result of the two values is Celsius value 1 plus Celsius value 2. Now, when I print, I'm going to see that the result of the two values is this. All right. What I'm going to ensure that you understand is this. Because the function doesn't print and it returns, we can hold the results for something else that we want later on. This is why it is important to return. Because if you like to print, it means you can't hold the results. But there are some functions, after you create them, you just have to hold the results. And so we're able to give the result to value 1. And who knows what we can do later with the result. You see, this is the importance of the return. Does anybody understand this? I'm waiting. Yes. Yes. Because if you didn't return and you said print, what would have happened was that after calculating, it will just print. But you see, because we will reuse it, we are not interested in printing. We will print when we are ready, when we want to print. But we want to store it. This is why we use return. So when you are defining a variable, you can use return or print based on what a function should do. Look at this. That function that was created has now become a module. Anybody can import it and use it. And you can see that we didn't write the code here, but we are able to use it. And we're able to use it 2 times on 2 different values. Now, let me come here and print this and say that Celsius 1 is, let me print only Celsius 1. And then let me duplicate this and say Celsius 2 is Celsius value 2. Let me run it, and now we'll see the power of functions. Wait a minute, that function is like a machine. Because we put 25 in, it brought a different result. Because we put 30 in, it brought a different result. That means it's a machine that anything you put in, it will bring its correct result. That means it is not static. This is the power of functions. You see, you can reuse it with a different input and it will produce something else. That, I think, is so powerful. So what we are going to do right now is to learn how to create a function. So this is a part where you get involved. All right, so Isaac, let's just call it definition, okay? This is a part where I involve you. So I want you to get your Python environment running. Get ready because now you are going to start creating functions. Where we have gotten to in our Python journey, it is time to take things seriously, okay? It is time to take things seriously. So this is not a time to just be watching things. This is a time to be hands-on. Yes, this is a time. So you need to be familiar with it. And you don't learn by watching, you learn by doing. Learn by doing. And what I want to achieve tonight is to bring you to this level. If you were at the level of if statement, now you come to the level of functions. Okay? If you were at the level of only for loop, as a for loop, I think is easy. Now you should come to how to create a for loop on a dictionary and understand it. You see, by yourself, you should be able to create a for loop on a dictionary. Then you should be able to create a while loop. And very soon, we will all move to the level of classes. Classes. That is powerful. All right. So let's start creating functions. So please type in the chat, creating a function. Creating a function. Please get your Python environment ready because I'm going to let you create functions right now. And if you're watching this video, please open to PyCharm or VS Code or any Python environment you use and get ready to upgrade yourself. All right. Now, I'm going to give you the syntax of creating functions. If you want to create a function, the very first thing you will do is to type def. Please type DEF in the chat. Def. That's the first thing you do. So I'm showing you the syntax. After we see the syntax, then what we will do is to now create the function. All right, def. Thank you. All of you have put def in the chat. You see, this def is not strange after all. You see, as for if, we are all used to if. It's the same thing. Changing if to def. So writing def should not be a problem. All right. Don't be afraid of def. If you are not afraid of if, don't be afraid of def. So when you type def, you are telling the Python interpreter that you are about to define a function. The Python interpreter will understand you. Okay, I'm now waiting for you to define your function. Now, I need some things. Python will ask you for some things. The first thing Python is going to ask you after writing your def is to provide a function name. You are giving Python an instruction to reserve a space to create a function for you. Python will ask you, give me a name. This function name is up to you. You are the one to choose your own name. And you choose your name based on what the function is about to do. You know, when we got to naming conventions, we learned that let's always choose names that are similar to the operation or what the code is about to do. So if you think your function is going to just greet someone, then you can call it greet. If you think your function is going to convert something, then write convert A to B. Name your function based on what it's going to do. And then it is compulsory, Python is still asking you that if you want to create a function, you have to provide this, and you have to provide the closing. As for this, it is not compulsory yet. This one, it can be compulsory or not, or it is not compulsory. This is optional. You will decide if you want to use it. This is an optional element in creating a function. This is an optional element. What I mean by optional is that Python doesn't require it, but you, the developer, will choose to use it or not based on what you want your function to do. But the rest are required. Let me go over. Number 1 here is required. Number 2 here is required. Number 3 here is required. Number 4 here is required. And number 5 here is required. But this thing here called parameters is optional. It is left to the developer if you would like to use a parameter or not. Now, this is where we define the function. After this, then you now provide your code block or your block of code. So by seeing this alone, I want you to be creative and define a function for me. Make sure you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in it. And if you want, create a parameter. If you don't want a parameter, you can leave it out. So I want everyone to define a function right now. Choose your own function name, just any name at all. Please do that in the chat, okay? Do that in the chat. Do that in the chat. Do that in the chat right now. So let me see the first person to tell us about their function. This is the syntax, the format, the structure of creating functions or defining functions in Python. Isimame, you are always on point. Thank you. So we have def age into bracket number colon. Excellent. So I can see 1, I can see 2, I can see 3, I can see 4 and 5. I've seen all of them. And you added bonus number. That's beautiful. That is it. So Franklin also did def. You want trouble? JM for Ghana into bracket X color. That's beautiful. I like that. We have gross profit. We have greets. Thank you. Frida, your function is correct. Capitalize. Isaac, I have a problem with capitalize because that's a good example. I have a problem with common names. Okay. I have a problem with what? Common names. Common names. There's nothing wrong with using a common name. However, that name may already exist in Python. So if you've been around Python, you see that Python likes some names. Benedine, I like that. So we don't use hyphen, use underscore. Benedine, thank you so much. Use underscore instead of hyphen. All right. So don't go and use def print. I mean, how would you use that? Although you are allowed to choose your name, if you use print, don't you think you are conflicting with the print function? Yes, you are. After you create a function called print, the print function in Python will no longer work because you have recreated your own print. Yeah, so always be creative with the name. The only thing to avoid is a name that Python has reserved. So if it is a reserved name, then don't choose it. So with what I am seeing, you all understand it. Olajide says that calculate average score. Beautiful. And don't put 40, Olajide. That 40 is a value. It's not a parameter. It is a value. We don't put values when we are defining. We put parameters. I like Mokuti. Yes. So Olajide, you have to put a variable instead of a value. And to save time, let me just talk about it. When you are defining a function, what we have in the parentheses is called a parameter. It's called a parameter. And that parameter is a variable. Now, when your function is called later in the code, the user, whoever called the function, must put in something in here. What the person will put in is no longer called a parameter. What is the technical programming term for the value that the user will provide or the caller of the function will provide? Who can tell me the technical programming name for the value of the parameter? Who can tell me? Yes, Hilary says it is called an argument. All right. So when you are defining the function, it is called a parameter. And when the function is being used, it is called an argument. So for us, we need to understand that. And the parameter is just a variable. And the argument is just a value. The same way you assign a value to a variable. Thank you all very much. You've all gotten this step. Next, all right, so here it says your own name. Then the colon, don't forget it. Then one important thing not to forget is this. Who can see what I have down here? Who can see what I have down here? Something just appeared here. I don't know if anybody saw it. Who can see? It's called indentation. You see, if you are using VS Code or PyCharm, the indentation will be provided for you. So you don't even think about it. If you look at our code, you saw that when we define the function, it's called social something. Where is it? When we define the function, you can see that it was indented. There was a big block here. You see, this indentation is important. And when you are learning how to define a function, we tell you because you may not be using an intelligent IDE like VS Code or PyCharm. And so if you are not using an IDE that will create the indentation for you, then you, the developer, needs to be sure to manually create the indentation. If you want to create the indentation, you can use tabs or you can use spaces. My question is, for those of you who know, how many spaces do you have to provide for the indentation if you are creating it manually? How many spaces? Benedine says 4. Thank you very much. You see, but then if the indentation is created for you, then you don't have to put any spaces. All right. If you are using tabs, it's just 1 tab. If you are using spaces, there are 4 spaces. Let's continue. Now, the comment here, I now want you to be introduced to a new terminology in Python. This comment here is referred to as a docstring. Please type docstring in the chat for me. Docstring. All right, so Ato is asking, why do we provide indentation? We provide indentation to ensure that the block of code become children of the function. If you don't provide indentation, it will move out of scope to become a parent or something of its own. But if you provide indentation, it is Python's way of saying that every code is a child of this function. Do you understand? Or every code is part of this function. All right. So in data analysis, you are going to be hearing docstring, docstring, docstring. What in the world is a docstring? Today, we are learning about docstring. Docstring is simply the comment that we write when we are defining functions. It is optional. You can define your function without providing a comment. Comments are optional. Comment will not be executed. However, if it has a docstring, it provides some notes about what a function is supposed to do, because every function is an operator and performs an operation. So the creator can say that I am creating this function to do so and so. So even though my code may be several lines and may be confusing, I'm just telling you what my operation is about or what my function does. Simple. Now, the real block of code will come after a docstring if you want to use a docstring. And at the end of the day, you can choose to return or print, period. Now, I'm going to take you through 5 ways of creating functions, and I'm going to let you practice each one of them. You can create a function with no parameters. So I already mentioned that the parameter is not compulsory, it is optional. But that is not to say that the parentheses are optional. Those parentheses, you need them. If you don't provide the parentheses, it is not going to be regarded as a function. If it is a function, it needs parentheses, whether you have parameters or not. So we have parentheses and parameters. Para, don't be confused. Parentheses and parameters. Okay. All right. Parentheses. All right. So I'm going to give you a simple function that I want you to create for me. After you create a function, you call the function. So we'll be talking about how to call a function. You see, let me take you back to the code we wrote. This function, does it have a parameter? Does it have a parameter? Yes or no? Does it have a it has. Now, if the function has a parameter, then what it means is that anytime you call it, you have to compulsorily provide the arguments. If you don't, there will be an error because the function is requesting for a parameter. And if you don't provide, you've made a mistake. So here, look at how we call the function. Now, this call can look complicated to you. Let me make it simple for you. Okay. This is a function we are looking for. It's called Celsius to Fahrenheit. So instead of saying import Celsius F converter, we can say that from Celsius F converter, import Celsius to Fahrenheit. You see? So this is a better way to import it. Now, if we're able to import it this way, then Celsius to Fahrenheit is now known. So to call a function, all you have to do is to provide the name of the function. So you can just say Celsius to Fahrenheit into bracket 25. That's all. This is called calling. This is called defining. This is called calling. To call the function, all you do is to remember the name you used. And then if the function requires an argument, then you provide it. Watch this. If I fail to provide this, let's run it and see if it will work. It's not going to work. It is missing one positional argument because the function was created to receive. So if you don't give, it's not going to work. So I have to give, and when I run, it's not going to do anything. Why is it not doing anything? Who can tell me why it's not doing anything? After I provided the correct information, why is it not doing anything? Who can tell me? Why is it not doing anything? No, it has been called. I've called it. This is a calling. This is how you call it. That's all. Why is it not doing anything? Why is it not showing anything? Okay, Frida says, good. The function is not supposed to print. The function's job is to return. So the result, watch this, the result is now stored in the function now. If I want to print, watch this, I have to say that print the function now. And what I'm saying here is that print the result. So now when we run it, it's now going to show something because originally the function does not print, it only returns. Let's experiment this further. Let's change this from return and now let's use print, right? To use print, you need to provide parentheses because the print is a function. You see, if you call a function, you need a parenthesis. So now we have changed how the function works. Let's come back here and let's run this. Will it print or not? Who can tell me? Will it print? Yes or no? Okay, someone says no. Someone says yes. Who else? No. Who else? Yes. A. Last one. No. Really? Next one. Next one. All right. Okay. So the yes has won. So when we run this, it's going to print. It is going to print. So right now, this function prints its results. It doesn't return its result. It prints its result. So when the function was defined, when it got the results, it was printed. Now, because it was printed, let's try and see if we can say what we did before. Celsius value 1 equals to this. Let's see if Celsius value 2. Let's see what will happen. Anything can happen. And let's print. Watch what we are doing now. F strings. We all understand F strings. Celsius 1 is Celsius value 1. Print Celsius 2 is Celsius value 2. Now let's run this and see what is going to happen. So there's a lot of mess going on here. A lot of mess going on. What is happening? What is happening? So now there's confusion. So you can see that the variable we put here didn't work. It is having none. It has no value. But we are printing a variable. The variable we collected here received none. Instead of the result, it received what? None. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Who can tell me what is happening? What is going on now? Why is it that the variables are not working? They are not receiving the values. This means that we cannot use it in further operations, further calculations. We cannot even add them. If I come here and say that, let's print another one, Celsius 1 plus 2 is, or are, Celsius value 1 plus Celsius value 2. Let's try it and see. It didn't work. It says that none type and none type cannot be used in addition. Exactly. Atul says that because we decided to print the result rather than store it. Not really store it, rather than return it. So you can see that sometimes you need return. Okay, this is very, very important. When you create a function, at the end of the day, the function must achieve something. After it achieves it, do you want to print it immediately? Sometimes it is yes, I want to print it. Other times I don't want to print it, but I want to return it, because if I return it, it can be stored. The result can be stored. If I don't return it, I am just printing it once and for all, and it cannot be stored. And if it's stored, we know that it can be used for so many things later. So for this particular function, if you don't return it, you have a lot of problems. Let's do some magic. Let's close this. Let's come here and correct our mistake. Instead of print, let's now say that, okay, please return. Let's go back and run the same code and see the difference. Beautiful. Can you see the difference now? Hello? Thank you very much. So when you define a function, when you get the results at the end of the operation, you can choose to print it or return it. If you return it, it means it can be collected. Now, when you return it, where does it stay? It stays within the function that you called. It stays in it. So you can transfer it to another variable or just use it that way. You can just print it or use it in a calculation right there and there. All right. Now, we want to start by creating a simple function. This is a function that has no parameters. Let's start from there, because for you to understand functions, you need to start from the basics. Let's come here. I want you to create this function on your computer. Type the def, type the greet. Don't forget a parenthesis is compulsory. Don't forget your colon. And if you've not created a docstring before, create the docstring for your function. And then print the result. When you are done, go down, down, down somewhere out of the indentation, anywhere in your code, and then call the function. You see how we call functions? It is so interesting how we call functions. You see the name that was used to define it? If you ever want to call your function, just type the same name with a parenthesis. If it has a parameter and you are providing an argument, then put the value of the argument inside here. But if it doesn't have, just go ahead. So please create this for me now. I want you to create this and take a screenshot and put it in the chat. To create a screenshot, press Windows and the print screen. Go to the chat and press Control V and paste it. I'm giving you 2 minutes. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Please do this for me. I'm waiting for you. All right. So you all did so well. I have a problem with the last code we are seeing here from Atto. Someone should tell us what is wrong with Atto's code. What is wrong with Atto's code? Someone should tell us. There's something little. Okay. So Atto missed a column. There's something else wrong. Something else. I didn't even see it because I hadn't zoomed in well. So the column was not even my problem. So Robly has answered you. Your calling was done within the indentation. Thank you, Frida. You cannot call within the indentation because it means you are saying that the calling is part of the function. Yeah, so the calling is done outside and most of the time, somewhere even far away from the definition. We don't have more code. That is why we are just calling right under it. So to move it out of the indentation and the problem is solved. But you've all done well. I've seen all of you. The work you've done is wonderful. All right. So in the real world, sometimes you create functions that do not have parameters. This is a very simple function. It is just printing something. Okay. A function can do anything you ask it to do. It can do 10 things, 100 things, 2,000 things, and have a result at the end. I can just do one thing. So this function, you just said it should print something. So you realize that anytime you call this function, the function prints it. Let me implement this code right now, and we see it over here. So let me just call it quickly. Let me be fast because of time. So let me call it function no parameter.py. All right, so this is a function. You type def, then you give it a name like greet. Okay, so I'm not looking on anything. All right, so my question here is that next time, if they ask you to create a function with no parameters, can you do it without AI, without any help, without Google? You have to be able to do it. So let me see if I remember. So I'll type, okay, someone should help me to create it. So the first yes was Bernardine. So Bernardine, what is the first thing I'll type here? If next time I'm told to define a function, what will I type, Bernardine? So don't forget this, def. You've done well. So now I provide the name of the function. Let's call it greet, okay? Because I'm a Python developer, I don't forget this ever. The parentheses you see here is what tells Python that it is a function. Then colon. Now, if I want a docstring, I can put it there, but the docstring is optional. So let me not use docstring, but I ask you to use it. Okay, let me just not use it now. Later, I'll use it. So this particular greet function, maybe I want it to do something. I want it to let me just tell it to print something. Welcome to functions in Python. Okay, let it do this. That's all. We are done. It's as simple as that. That's all. So later somewhere, I can call this function. All right, so the next person, Israel. How do I call this function? How do I call the function, Israel? How do I call this function? This particular function, how do I call it? Thank you. So we just say greet with this, with this. All right, so now let's run it and see if it works. If it works, it should do what we said it should do. You see, a function like this, you don't have to return. Beautiful, we are done. Let's move on to our second task. Our second task here is where we are asked to create a function with a single parameter. All right. And this particular function, I want you to upgrade your first code to create this. But let me see if I have a different code for that. So this time, you are creating a function that will greet someone, but use the same function name. But it needs the name of the person so that it can personalize the greeting. All right. So create this function, upgrade your function, your first function. The first function is okay, it's working, but upgrade it by using a single parameter. So you are now defining a function with a single parameter. Sometimes in Python, we use single parameters to define functions. Sometimes in Python, we use no parameters. So the usage of parameters fully depends on what the developer wants to achieve. So please upgrade this. If you are done, put it in the chat for me. Let me see it. This should take you how many seconds? 30 to 60 seconds. So let me see the first person who can give us this. So your, you see the printing in the function, has been upgraded. We are using f strings now, and we are injecting the variable in. Robly is done. Let me see. Beautiful. I like your docstring. I like your print. I like your parameter. And now, you see that the calling has also been upgraded. If you want to call the function now, the function is also going to ask you to provide an argument. If you fail to provide the argument, it's not going to work. So I've seen Robly. Robly was on time. Let me see who else will post on time. I gave you 30 to 60 seconds. I'm checking who else will be able to post on time. Just upgrade your function and now use a single parameter. Use a single parameter. Use a single parameter. Use a single parameter. Good. Esimami, I like the way you are using Jupyter to make it easy. The Jupyter environment is making this work so easy. Thank you, Esimami. Thank you so much. Perfect. 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 Hello, AC. Wow. Thank you. And I can also see Lucretia. Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. Beautiful. Lucretia. Thank you. Okay, so Daniel is saying I can't upload. We are not uploading, we are just taking a screenshot. So press window key on your keyboard and the print screen. The print screen is somewhere at the top right corner of your keyboard. Look for it somewhere. Hold the window and press the print screen. When you do that, it will copy it into memory. Go to the chat and press Ctrl V to paste and send. Ctrl V to paste. Bernardine cannot post. Why? Is there an error somewhere? You should be able to post. All right, so I can see Isaac. Isaac has done a wonderful job. But Isaac, you are printing Zeph's name. Why don't you have a name, Isaac? Or is this the work of Zeph? This is Isaac, anyway. Okay, that's fine. All right. All right, that's fine. Okay, I'm not I'm not saying you should use your own name. Feel free to use anybody's name. We are family. We are family. Years ago, do you know what happened? I was shocked. One of my students, several years ago, I've been teaching for 10 years now. He's always quiet in the class. He's always quiet. I didn't know what was going on. Later, I was shocked. They brought me an invitation for wedding. I should come to their wedding. Hey, these students were in class so quiet, you will not know what is happening. Later, they were getting married. Wow. I was shocked. I went to the wedding and I was just shocked. I said, hey, not even once. It's fine. We are all one, so let's feel free. All right, so we've seen this, and let's see if we can create this quickly. Let's see if we can create this quickly. So now let's come to this function here, and let's upgrade it. Now, next time they ask you to define a function with a single parameter. So what are you going to do? Let me create a new file for this. Let me create a new file. Maybe we'll refer to this later. So let's call this function with single parameter.py. All right. All right. So I'm now going to define a function. Okay. So who can tell me the first thing to type here? I need to greet someone, but I need to collect the name. So what is the first thing to type? Okay, so def, and then let's call it greet like before. Thank you, Frida, and thank you, Esimami. Then I need to put a parameter here. How do I know the parameter? Listen, the parameter is a variable, all right? Anytime you are writing a program and you want to create a variable, you are free to choose your variable name. There is no law here. So just give it a name, but let it be descriptive and Pythonic. So I know that I'll be receiving a name, so I'll call my variable name. The parameter is a variable. Then what am I left to provide? What is left to do now, which is compulsory? What am I left to do now? Column, good. Thank you, Bernardine. Now you can see the indentation has been created. So now let me think how I'll handle this situation. I think this is simple. I can just print, use F strings, and say that welcome, then collect the variable name. Welcome to the Python functions. Let's call it to Python functions. All right, good. We are done. So now later, when we say calling the function, we call the function greet. That's all. But this greet, it needs a value. You can see that in this context, we have used it as a string in F strings. So we need to provide a string. So we need to provide a string, and let's call it, let me see the name here. I see Esimami. Esimami, okay. Esimami. All right, so let's run this and see if we'll have an error or it's going to work. All right, so it says, welcome Esimami to Python functions. Beautiful. One interesting thing about this function is that I don't have to modify the function. You see, the function is a machine and you can put anything inside. There is something like that in primary school mathematics. I've just forgotten. So let's call greet again, and the same greet, let's now give it another name. Let's give it Frida. Let's run it now, and you can see that it will greet Esimami, all right. It will also greet Frida, all right. And it is a machine. Any name I provide, it will operate on it. So we call greet again, and we'll say Israel. When we run this, you can see that it will greet Israel as well. So you can see the power of functions in Python. It promotes what we call code reusability. You can see that I have used it here, I have used it here, I have used it here without writing more code. I'm just calling it 3 times. I can call it as many times as I want. Now let's move to the next level. We are going to create a function with multiple parameters. Multiple parameters. So now pay attention here. When it comes to receiving parameters, you, the developer, you are free to define, or you are free to collect any parameters you want based on the operation you are working on and the output. So if you say you want 1, you just go ahead and write 1. If you want 2, just go ahead and ask for 2. What you have to keep in mind is that because you are asking, when we call the function and we don't provide, there's going to be an error. So you can see that the function here is working 3 times. But next time, if I call it and I don't provide the arguments, there will be an error. So the only thing to remember here when it comes to function parameters is that if you ask for 1, it needs to be provided with 1, or it needs to receive 1 when it is being called. If you ask for 2, it needs to receive 2. If you ask for 3, it needs to receive how many arguments? Who can tell me in the chat? If you ask for 3 parameters, how many arguments should it receive? It should receive 3. That's all. So there's nothing different or nothing strange about parameters. You just have to understand that if you ask for 2, you will be given 2, or the function will request for 2. So this is another function with multiple parameters, and this function is asking for 2 parameters. Why 2? Because that's what the developer needs to perform the operation he wants to. He's just calculating the total, price and quantity. You see? So he's creating a calculator just now. And he needs the price and he needs the quantity to calculate the total. So think, if you're a developer and you are creating a calculator, you have to know the maths and you have to know the values you need. You should know that if I want total of an item bought, I know that I will need the price of 1 and then how many were bought before I can calculate the total price. All right. But if you are not looking for total price and you are looking for something else, then that will inform how many parameters you will use. Is this part clear to somebody? Is this part clear to somebody? All right, thank you, Esimami. So right now, I'm going to give you 60 seconds or maybe 2 minutes. I want you to create this program and ask for 2 parameters and create this function down, which is a price calculator. At the end of the day, call it 3 times and provide different prices and different quantities and print them all. You see, create a function down. You see, the function is like a machine. It's like a machine. It's an operator. When you are done, call it 3 times and give it different prices and different quantities. And let's see what you get. Post the outputs in the chat for me. I give you 2 minutes. I'm waiting for you. All right. So now I found a way to see those who are working and those who are just watching. And moving forward, this is what we are going to be doing. Yes, when we are working in class, I will want to see what you are doing. Yeah, so that we know those who are working and those who are eating or those who are sleeping, we can see. So that I'll know those whose marks to deduct and those who will get more marks. So this is really good. So I'm seeing your work. That is wonderful. All right. So let's create this. Let's create this. And this is multiple parameters. So let me create a function here. So let's say a function with multiple parameters dot py. Okay. All right. So now I need you to help me create a function that will calculate total price. What's the first thing to type? What's the first thing to type? So we say def, then we will say, we give it a name. The name, you can choose your name. So calculate total price. Let me call it calculate total price. Then we know that we will need to calculate total price. When I think about it, I know that I need to collect price, single price, and then the quantity. I know that. All right. So the parameters here, you can use your own name, but it is good to be very descriptive in Python so that we know exactly what we are looking for. All right. So here, what we will do is that we can create a variable now and say that total price, okay, is equal to, total price is equal to, what is the total price? How do we get total price? Who can help me here? How do we get total price? Let me see who can help me. So I'm not looking on the other code. I'm just thinking, okay? And I know what to do, but I want you to help me. So price times quantity. Okay, so the question here is that how do we know how to use this price times quantity? How do we know how to use price times quantity? We know, yeah, you can call it unit price, okay? We know because that price times quantity were used here as parameters. You have to understand that anytime you create a parameter, you have created a variable, so you can use it within the function. All right. And when it comes to variables, you have to understand variable scope or scope of variable. Variable scope. Okay. Some variables have what we call global scope, and some variables are called or have local scope. So this variable, is it global or local? This variable called price, is it global or local? Is it global or local? It's local. Thank you, Robley. Thank you. It's local. It's not global. This means that even though it is a variable, if I come here and I say print price, I'm going to be told that there's nothing called price. What is price? This price does not match any unindent, I don't even know what it's saying, but it doesn't match any known variable because it is out of scope. When we talk about the scope, we are talking about where it lives. All right. If it lives within a function, it is local to that function. That means it can only be used within that function. That's why we call it local. But if you come up here and you create a variable called price equals to 25, this variable, is it local or global? Is it local or global? It's global now. This means you can use it anywhere in the program. If you print it, it will work. If you print it, it will work. Let me see what I didn't give. All right, forget about this. We'll finish the function soon. All right, let me delete this. Now, when you print this, I'm probably indenting somewhere. I'm not seeing where. Okay, I created unnecessary. Okay, I've seen it here. All right. It will work. You can print this 1,000 lines later and it will work. All right, because it is global. But if I come inside a function and I create a like this total price, this total price is not known, even if I give it a value. Okay, let's say total price equals to 25. And here I come and say print total price. Okay, so there's nothing called total price. This total price is unknown. So when you run this total price is not known anywhere because it is only known under this function. Outside it is not known. So we call that local and global scope. All right, so let's get back to the work. So we have price times quantity. And now we can choose to return the total price and say total price, return it. All right, we are done. Yours, did you return or you printed yours? Let me know in the chat. Did you return or you printed yours? Did you return or you printed it? You returned it. All right, so one person says another person printed. Because the code I gave you, you see that we printed, right? Good. So sometimes you can choose to print and sometimes you can choose to return. No problem. It's just up to you what you want to do, all right? So this time, anytime I call mine, calculate total price, it is going to ask for two things. What is the first price? The first price is 120, comma, what is the quantity? 5. All right, so PyCharm has identified it, price times quantity. So I can call this product 1. Sorry, product 1. Then I can do product 2 and say calculate total price. The price is 300, quantity 4. Then I can say product 3. Calculate total price. What's the price? The price is 500 and the quantity 2. We are done. So let me now print f strings grand total equals product 1 plus product 2 plus product 3. All right. So right now, when I run this, I'm going to get my grand total to be 2,800. I'm not getting individual prices because I decided to return the result and I stored it. I can use it later. But then I can clean this and clean this. If I don't want to store it, I can clean this and then change the logic here and say print. Print the total price. You see how quickly it remembered total price. See, I said total price, it remembered it down here. But if I come out of scope and I say total price, it won't remember it, it doesn't know it. You see, it won't see it because this is local. All right. All right, let's end it there. Because I was going to say that later, you can say total price. This total price, I'll show you that one later. Let's just print this. So now it can print it for you just like you did. This is perfect. That's beautiful. All right, so now we have used multiple parameters. Okay, I have a few minutes. Let's see the next challenge here. Now we are going to create a function with what we call default parameters. Please type default parameters in the chat for me. Default parameters. Default parameters. So this evening, thank you, Robley. Thank you, Benedine. Thank you, Timothy and Frida. Prosper, thank you. What we've been able to achieve is that we've been able to create functions with no parameters, functions with single parameters, functions with multiple parameters, okay? Multiple parameters. This means if I ask you to create a function with 3 parameters, you can do it, all right? Okay. Now we are going to look at functions with default parameters. Thank you for typing it. Now, when you say a default parameter, this is it. Watch it carefully. A default parameter is just like having single or multiple parameters. But this time, it is giving a default value. This time, it is giving a default value. So you can see that this is a simple function that has a single parameter. But, and I told you that a parameter is a variable. If you remember, I said that. But it has been given a value by default within the definition. Okay, wait a minute. So sometimes it is possible that when you create a parameter, you can give it a default value. Default value. Default value. Please type default value in the chat for me. Default value. Someone said I was watching your video and I was looking for where to put in the chat. You can't put it in the chat if you are not in the live class. Okay, only those in the live class can put it in the chat. Now, this is another powerful way of defining functions because if the parameter has a default value, what it means is that when you call it here, the caller can choose to provide the arguments or can choose not to provide it. Wait a minute, let me repeat what I said. If the function was defined with default parameters, it means that the parameter already has a value. And so when you call it, you can choose to give it a new value, or you can choose not to give it a value and you will not get an error. So I'm going to create this function right now. And let's go back to our previous function like this. Okay, watch this. Watch this. We have price and we have quantity. Let's set quantity to 1. This means we are giving a default value to quantity. What does it mean? What it means is that there is a default value. So when you call the function calculate total price and you give it a price of 500 and we run this code now, are we going to get an error or not? Yes or no? Are we going to get an error? Yes or no? No, we are not going to get an error. Okay, so when we print this, when we run this, you see that we'll get a total 500. Wow. But wait a minute. If there is no default value and we run this function, will we get an error? Yes or no? Yes, we'll get an error now. So when we run it, we'll get an error because, wait a minute, it is missing one required positional argument. It is missing quantity. You didn't give us quantity. So whenever you create parameters, they are very, very serious about the inputs or the arguments. If you use 2, they will demand for 2. If you use 3, they will demand for 3. You cannot use 3 and provide only 1. You cannot use 2 and provide only 1. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've done it already. But then you can choose to make one of them default. And by default, it means that you can also give this default. Let's call the default price of 200. That's a default price. This means right now you can call the function with nothing. Will it work or not? Yes or no? We called it with nothing. Will it work? Yes or no? So when you run it, you see that it worked. We didn't provide anything. Okay, let's go. Let's call it again. And now let's provide 300, 5. Will this work or not? This second calling or call, will it work? Yes or no? Yes, Robly says it will work. It will work. So what will be the output of the second call? What will be the output of the second call? Just do the math. What will be the output of the second call? 1,005. So when we run this, you see that we have 200 and 1,005. How did that happen? How did that happen? What it means for you to understand is that if the function has a default value, it means you can choose to provide it or not. And it means that if you provide it, we will use your own. If you don't provide, which one are we going to use? If you don't provide, which one are we going to use? The one provided by default. Thank you. This means that I'm going to call it again and provide only 300. Here, I provided 300. Here, I'm also providing 300. The third call, what will be the result of the third call? The third call is going to give us 300 because I provided the price. I didn't provide the quantity. And so it used the default quantity. But if I say that, wait a minute, I want to control the price, the quantity. So let me provide quantity 2. The third call, what are we going to get now for the third call? We are going to get 600. This means you understand it. This is called default parameters. So you can have a single parameter with default, or you can have multiple parameters and you can make some defaults, all defaults, or non-default. So the default simply means you are choosing to provide default values to the parameters. Simple. The next one, which is my favorite, and I think time is running. Oh my goodness. Should we do part 2 of this? Should we do part 2 of this? Okay. All right. I think so. Because now we've got into the favorite parts. This is the most interesting part. This is the real part that if you know this one, we call this one star axe. Please put star axe in the chat. Star axe. Put star axe in the chat. And then we have double star quacks. Put double star quacks in the chat after the star axe. All right. So we are going to do star axe and quacks, axe and quacks. Now you see how we use Python functions. And this will be so interesting. So next week, we are going to continue from here. And I'm going to be sending your assignment to cover what we've done so far. And you work on it and send the results to the work to assignments@ritafrica.org. Facts. I see. All right. So the assignment will be shared with you. Probably Bernardine will post it on WhatsApp or you get it in email, but you get it as soon as possible. Yeah, so let's work on what we've done so far and let's practice. The goal is to bring you to the next level, okay? That's how we are going to be learning Python now. We are done with the baby Python codes, all right, and Python programming. Now we are going to move to the next level. So the next level is supposed to be hands-on. The next level is supposed to be practical. The next level is supposed to, we call it a skill acquisition level. you're already familiar with the code. Now you have to have the skill, experience, and confidence. That's where we are now. So now you need to be writing the code, writing the code, writing the code. And this is what will make you the real Python developer. All right. We are blessed to be able to go through Python and really master it. Don't miss our Python classes. Don't miss anything we will be doing. Make sure you are part of it every week and you upgrade yourself. When it's time, get your machine ready. Make sure you are coding along. And the videos will be shared as well. You can rewatch and get the most out of it. All right. It is little by little that you become great. So all the little lessons and tasks, you make sure you do all of them. And last question to you is that have you learned anything new in this particular class? In this particular lesson, have you learned anything? Wow, wow, wow. That makes me so happy. And I want you to have the skills practically. So start closing your eyes to help, okay? And start thinking in terms of functions. Now you can create your own function, okay? Your own function. And even try creating a module. A module is just a function that is kept in a different file and imported in a different file. Simple. Just be trying those things because that's what you'll be needing tomorrow. Just be trying them. And that is what will really make you a Python developer. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. And we are doing a lot for you. Tomorrow we have multiple classes as well. Let's get connected and be part of everything we are doing. Thank you for joining, and I will see you in the next class. I wish you all the best. Good night and bye-bye.